And we are live. Guys, I just wanted to come on here today to see what is going on, to see if there were anything, was anything that you guys might be interested in talking about. If so, leave me a comment and some questions, and we'll talk about them. I'm curious what all you guys have been doing lately, what kind of projects that you all may have. I know for us, we have been doing some upgrading of older technology. In fact, if you'd seen the last video that I released prior to this one, you'll see where I had actually gone in and replaced an old NAE 55 and upgraded it to a newer SNA 2200. And that is a lot of what we're doing now because of with the way the technology changes and all that. But if you're out there, drop me a comment over here and let me hear from you. I know, again, I did not announce this prior, and I think that that's something that I do need to start doing. It's just the way that my schedule is, it's just almost impossible. But hopefully, I'll get to that point to where it is a little more consistent. Currently, I see that there's two folks in here. Just say hi over in the comments. Just let me know who's in here with us. If you got any questions, throw them out there. Okay. Hello, hello. I'm going to see if I can bring this up a little more for my viewing ease, I guess you could say. Who do we have here? Sleep Paracel. I'm going to butcher your name. I'm sorry. Ghosting on networks. Bumped into a trunk address duplicate, BACnet ID with a device. Hey, Paul, how are you doing? Okay, now what you can do if you have a duplicate ID, you've got to change it. There's no other way to put it. You've got to change that duplicate ID and you got to eliminate it. You have to have it consistent, just going all the way up through. You should be able to go through your network depending on how many devices are on there, and you should be able to see an ID that we're basically an open ID. It will change, it'll break all your bindings as far as graphics and things like that, and any potential user views, depending on what version of Metasys you're running, or even if it's Tritium or whatever. You're going to have to go in and repair some connections, because it will break those connections once you change that ID. But again, I'm surprised that it's even online. A lot of times on our networks, if you have a duplicate ID, then you're going to put the network offline. I mean, that's just all there is to it. We get a lot of toggling on a lot of our networks if we have duplicate IDs. We actually have a couple of buildings where folks have accessed those. They have like the smart thermostats, and they've gotten in and messed stuff up, changed the addressing on it, and usually that brings down the whole trunk. And we've had that happen several times. How can you scan an entire site? Because this was done by someone else. If I assume you're talking about scanning an entire network, you should just be able to do it if you're running Metasys or if you're running Tritium or whatever. There are a couple ways you can do it. And one way you can do it is in SCT. If you've got an archive, if you're in Metasys and have an archive, which, guys, just a heads up also, I had tried to be able to actually pull the software up to where we could actually sit here and I could show you guys on screen a few things. I've not been able to figure out how to do it, because every time that I try to do that to be able to log into it, it gives me an error and it just kicks me out. It bumps me right out. I know it's got to be in with something with the security stuff. So that's one of the reasons why I don't do that, or why I'm not doing it right now. So if you're using Metasys, one of the things that you can do is you can use SCT. And you can go in SCT and set up a custom summary viewer. And then from that, you can actually go in and set it up where it's going to list all of the instance IDs for all the devices on that trunk. And then all you have to do is then just do a viewer summary, summary viewer and then it will actually show you an entire list. And if it has any duplicate IDs, they should show up in that list. There again, that can be just that's probably one of the easier ways of doing it. I know that there are some other tools from Johnson that scan the entire network as far as everything that you have out there, that will tell the Johnson folks, and it's usually the Johnson folks that use this tool, that tell them pretty much the model number and everything that's out there. I mean, it spits out a huge file, but you're talking a software that runs for I think it takes it like a couple of days, depending on the size of your network. Probably the easiest way of doing it. Another way you may try is just doing the auto discover feature. If you do the auto discover feature and then sort by the instance IDs and see if you can find one that is in there twice, basically. If it has, depending on if it's the instance ID, if it's the device ID, which, they're again 4, 5, 6 on up, whatever it is, it may show up that way. You may see it up there, and that'll get you kind of filtered down to that area. The other way, almost, and it's the painful way, would be basically going in, finding a middle spot on the trunk, breaking the connection on that trunk at that point, and then seeing if the problem goes away. If it does, there again, that would be a hard way of doing it. What I would do, I would go through and see if I could find it from the auto discover feature. Again, go up there, do on your trunk, just click on your trunk, and depending on which version you're using, you would do an insert and then field device, and then just let it do an auto discover, and it should show you everything on that trunk in the auto discovery window. Which I could give you some more information, but that would be the first step I did. I would do the auto discover from the start, and just to see if it would pull it in. It may or may not. That's one option of doing it. Found a few, then found third-party controllers with options for IP or MSTP. Both show up on scan. Interesting. Should I delete and start over? It is a possibility that you may need to. In fact, if you have a duplicate ID on one, the only way that you're going to be able to get it back in is I would first identify which device that has that duplicate ID. And then once you identify that device, just literally make you a list of it. And that's going to be the device that you need to go to change. And then once you do that, then delete it. And then you'll have to pull it back in with a new ID. Your third-party devices, and that's something that you can run into on third-party devices. We've actually had some stuff they've pulled in some of our engineering labs, equipment that they have brought in, and they put it on the campus network. And when I try to do a scan to run something, I end up finding duplicate IDs like that as well. And I've been trying to get our IT to understand the problems that can cause, but they see it a little bit differently than the building automation world does. And so they don't really have any kind of policies that they've put in place to help correct that. But yes, I completely understand that. So what I ended up doing is I actually had to go in and change some IDs of some of our devices. And yes, I had to delete them out, go into the device, change that ID, and then pull them back in. It can be frustrating, but unfortunately, that's what we run into in this day and age. But yes, if you're going to change that ID, you're going to have to delete it anyways. But first step is to identify which ones. And again, I would do the ones that would be the easiest to change. That's just me personally. If you've got a third-party device, you can't change it very easily, then, you might want to select a device that you can change fairly easily. So hopefully that helps. And again, guys, I wanted to have the software up to where we could actually look at a few things, but I've not figured out how I can do that yet. Something about trying to do a live stream with it, it kills it. So I know it's not my computer. I'm like 99% sure that it's some of the security stuff that we run. And, but that's just part of it, but hope that helps. So anybody got anything else? Not a problem, man. Anytime. Good luck with that. And again, I mean, it's going to break. It's going to cause you some aggravation. It's going to cause you a little heartache on it. And if it's a site that you're commonly working on, try to get some kind of a structure. I know one of the guys that works at JCI that is on our site regularly. He actually has built an instance ID calculator that we use fairly regularly. Basically, we base the instance IDs for each engine off of there's a formula that he set up. It's an Excel spreadsheet. And we enter some basic information on that, and it lets us have a running instance ID range, basically, like when we go to bring in a new building or if we are doing a big renovation. And it's just a simple formula to where it's going to give you a range. For example, say if you had a couple of engines, like your first trunk, and we'll just hypothetically say that, we've got a few different engines. The first one that has just one trunk, your first one would be like 1,000 through whatever, 1,100. The second trunk could be, 1,200 on, or just hypothetically, you know what I'm saying. Leave yourself some wiggle room in any type of situation like that as well, because that there's always going to be renovations and ads and things like that. So I see that we have about 4 people in here, small crowd, but hey, we're all here, so let's talk. Who else do we have? I know Paul was in there a minute ago. Who else do we have? Drop me a comment. Let's throw a question out there, and we can just chat about it. I was going through some of the analytics on my channel, and I noticed that one of the searches that was very common was chilled water systems. And I know that I've gotten a couple of videos on chilled water systems. Basically, I think I did one on programming, and then I did one that is basically kind of an overview. I may try to redo some of those and just to get a little more information in it. And chill water systems, there's a lot of variation in chill water systems. It seems like every single thing is a little bit different. Optimization. Okay, let's get a little more specific. Are you talking an overall system or just chillers? Because there's a lot of different directions we can go with that. Now, depending on your machine, depending on your overall system, there's a lot that can be done. So are we talking just chill water systems, or are we talking an overall system? Overall system, okay. I assume you're also wanting to get into basically reducing overall energy consumption. So we'll go and throw that out there. There's a couple of possibilities there. If you have individual zone control within your buildings, one of the best things you can do is zone scheduling. If those areas are not used, basically shut them off. Production and distribution. Okay. Yeah, production and distribution. Okay. There again, that gets into a lot of things. I assume that you're talking about production of chilled water. Give me just a little more info. I'm there again. My brain, I'm thinking like building specific, but give me just a bit more info. Are you talking like the production and distribution of a chilled water system to a building, group of buildings, and all that? Because if you are, it kind of plays into the same thing. If you have an area that is not being used and you've got chilled water that is being used in that area, you're basically wasting energy. So what you can do is you can throttle those back using scheduling. Typically, you're going to want to work with the occupants of that area. Like if you have a group of offices or classrooms and things like that, plant to AHUs to VAVs. Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. From your plant, again, starting at the VAVs, we're going to have to go about this backwards, because the VAV is basically the end of the demand. Everything upstream of the VAV is what serves that VAV. The VAV is served by the air handler. The air handler is served by the chilled water system. So if you use zone scheduling, VAV scheduling, things like that, what you can actually do is you can throttle down areas that are not being used. You can actually throttle back the air handler as well. For example, if it takes, hypothetically, I'm just going to throw it out there. If you're typically running your air handler at like 1.5 inches of static pressure to supply all of the VAVs in a building, what you can do is you can shut off the VAVs that are not used at a particular time. You will then allow that air handler, you may be able to get away with with throttling down that air handler. And the way that you can tell if you look at the position of all of the dampers, easiest way to do it is look at damper positions on all of your VAVs, depending on which version of Metasys that you're using. What you can do it in any of them, but if you're using like MUI, your equipment summary, set it up to where you can see all of the damper positions. And if you're using the older SMP, you can do a query and just pull in your damper positions that way. And what you can actually do is throttle down your air handler based upon what those damper positions are doing. For example, if all of your dampers are like at 100%, obviously you're needing your maximum airflow from your air handler. However, if all of your dampers in the building are like at 30%, it's pretty obvious that you could get away with throttling that air handler down. And that kind of plays into it. And we actually use a logic sequence in some of our buildings to where we're looking at the damper position on the VAVs. And as those VAVs begin to back down, once we get to a high enough percentage of them backing down, we will actually start slowing down the air handler by dropping the discharge pressure set point. And that lets us throttle that air handler down. Once you throttle that air handler down, you then reduce the need for as much chilled water, the same with hot water as well, depending on what your system is doing overall. One thing that you've got to pay attention to on that is building pressure. If you have an area or a building that has a lot of labs, if you're running a lot of exhaust and things like that, you're going to need to pay real close attention to it, because what can happen is you can actually pull your building negative, and you don't want to pull the building negative, because then you're bringing in air that is not conditioned, and you can have mold, you can have other issues like that if you do that. So, but it is a very effective way in optimizing your system. And the other thing too, when you get into the scheduling, is you do have the ability within the software to do the optimum start. And we've actually done down to VAV level optimum starts, where basically when we get a list of events or classes or whatever within a particular space, we'll take that and then we can put in our system on that schedule the exact time that that event is going to be in. You can, depending on your organization and all that, you can figure a little more or a little earlier. It really depends on how you guys operate. But having that schedule, basically that room is going to stay unoccupied until the system sees that it needs to turn it on at a particular time to have it at set point. For example, you get into milder weather and you're trying to run, just hypothetically, you're trying to run a temperature of 72 degrees in your room. If you have a room that, you know, the weather's mild outside, and the room is already like 71 degrees just because the weather's mild and nice and all that kind of stuff, it may not necessarily need to start up an hour or so ahead of time. So you can leave that down. That's where that optimum start comes in handy. However, if you get into a time of year to where it's super hot or super cold and the room could be, you know, 5 to 10 degrees out, then that system can calculate based upon like outside air temperature and a few other factors. It can calculate when it needs to start that VAV. And then once it starts it, you know, and it actually learns. It'll actually learn as it runs. The more it runs, the more it learns. It will actually see, well, I didn't make it this time. I didn't make set point by the official start time, so I need to adjust this a little, and so on. But that is probably one of the best ways to do some optimization on it. Also, the other thing too is to make sure that your machines are doing what they need to do. Make sure that the dampers and your air handlers are working right. Also, you want to see, like, when your air handlers are running, don't try to run economizers. You know, your outside air, don't run 100% outside air. If it's a mixed air unit, 100% outside air when it's 90 degrees outside, you're obviously going to be making that chiller work much harder than it should. You know, if you have a 100% outside air unit, well, that's a different discussion. But on a mixed air unit, go back through your air handlers, get them back to basically commissioned state, and you know, start from there. So that would be the first things that I would do. Is I'd start at the VAV level. First of all, make sure that all your equipment is running the way that it's supposed to, and then just start walking my way back. Zone scheduling, room scheduling will make the fastest impact on your overall usage. Track your energy usage. If you've got meters on it or something like that, start watching those meters, and I promise you're going to see a big change when you start scheduling those rooms. So that's just a few things to throw out there. So what else we got? Anything else? Hope that's some ideas, and throw something else at me. The AF, DO, DD, and continuous CX do you like? Good question. I'm not real sure. The AF, DD, and CX do you like? I don't know. I really don't know. Most of our equipment, most of the stuff we use is basically, we're using the CGMs, CVMs, the newer ones, the M4s. And just to throw this out there, guys, because I know that this is something that come up recently, believe it or not, your F4, the Facilities Explorers devices, will work with Metasys. We've actually got trunk right now, and to where you can have various different equipment out there. There again, BACnet is BACnet. HVAC IR. You had an FEC 1610 with a fault code. No matter how hard I tried, was not able to connect to it. I tried loading the CAD file and didn't work as well. Is there a way to factory reset these controllers? There is an issue with certain FECs. What I have seen, and there again, this goes back, I know some of the field support guys, there is a known issue, because we actually had an FEC do the same thing. In fact, I've got one that if we ever have any issues out of it, we're just going to have to end up replacing it because of that very same thing. Can't access it no matter what. We've actually had one of the JCI techs, and that is he's one of the wizards of this stuff. And he was unable to connect to it. He called field support, and it was kind of the same way. And, it is absolutely insane that happens, but you can try to do an update on the firmware, but we have not had luck with that one. Again, where we are with it is if we have an issues, it goes in the trash, and I put a CGM in there. That's just kind of where we are with that one. Some of this stuff, for whatever reason, they just it doesn't want to work as well as it should. There's something going on with them. There's just, I don't know if it's a hardware thing, software, or what, but it is something that's common. Okay, John, so you've been working on a site that's insane, an NAE55 linked to a Jace with a Jace supervisor. All Johnson Field controllers. Took the local branch 3 times to install the software correctly on a laptop. Are they running okay, so you're going to a Jace supervisor, so I assume that you're using Tritium front end. Now, depending on what you are wanting to do, and I don't know why places do this, that NAE55, you could put a Jace there on that and do whatever you wanted with it too if you needed to replace that. But an NAE, a Jace, they're basically doing a lot of the same thing. It basically just comes back to which front end you're going with. And I know that there's going to be people that maybe disagree with that on some occasions, but depending on what front end you want, whether you want a Tritium front end, whether you want a Metasys front end, it's up to you. Then these things can work together. We have some Jaces pulled in on our system, if you've seen some of my videos. And I know that you can do the same thing. You can pull network engines in to a Tritium system. Let's see here. Quoted to replace it for now. Was just wondering. Yeah. But yes, if you're able to get that out of there, if you're going back with the Tritium front end, that's probably going to be the same thing. Just go through all the logic. I'm sure there will be logic in that 55 that that'll have to be rebuilt. And, but yeah, you can, there's a lot that you can do. But yeah, you can see there, John. Yeah, I see your suggestion too. That's another option. But yes, pulling that 55 out, just pulling in the device as MSTP. And yep, the Tritium front end, again, as far as Metasys or Tritium, probably 90% of it is who it is that sets it up, especially for customers. You can have good customers, or I guess you could say you could have good techs and good people that will set up a Tritium system in one place. You can have good techs in another place that set up a Metasys system. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both, as you guys obviously know that. But it all comes down to how useful it is to the organization that's using it. If it's getting the data that they're needing for whatever, and that's the main thing. And there again, data is data. It's just all about how you present it. Me personally, and this is just my personal opinion, and while I will admit there's a lot of advantages on Tritium, there's also advantages on Metasys as well for certain things. The way that we use our system for now, we have an advantage with Metasys because there is a lot of new reporting feature within Metasys, and that is basically for how we operate is extremely useful. It's a big time saver for us. That same type of reporting system is not in Tritium yet, but it's getting closer. Let's see here. You spent 2 years at Johnson and went to another contractor putting in Tritium. Distech OEM. Yeah, it depends on who is putting it in, because I'm telling you, man, there's so much out there. And if you work for Johnson, I'm sure you probably went through the Johnson Best program at one point in time. The training that they offer, and it's a lot of these companies too. I think that the training that they offer, they don't spend enough time on the technical side of things. Personal opinion. You got a lot of guys out there that are new, that are coming into the building automation world, and they'll give them the email etiquette and all that kind of stuff. But they really need to put more emphasis on the technical aspect of it. Literally how to set up a controller, how to do the programming, and literally, especially how to convert older systems to newer systems. Perfect example. How do you change out a DX9100 to a new CGM? Things like that, because that is what you run into in the real world, as you guys very well know. And I know I'm just talking to the choir on this one. Yes, agree. There is, the Metasys front end is great, but you've seen it deployed completely correctly like twice. Yes. That's the big thing. One of the problems that I think that happens is the fact that there's too much outsourcing of work. There is no basic craftsmanship when it comes to the building automation world. Now, that's something that we haven't heard much of in a good while, is craftsmanship. And when these companies basically, they try to outsource everything over to India or whatever to get work done just as cheaply as possible, and in many cases, not necessarily by people that are the most skilled at doing it, you get what you get. I know we've had some before. We had some graphics done, and they ended up crashing our server, and I was not happy about it, but I got it fixed and got it back running. But that's just an unfortunate reality of what we have happening. Hospital weekly service visits. Their graphic is at 95% non-functional system. Definitions broken. No alias graphics set up. Not fun. Yeah, basically on something like that, what you might there again, if the equipment definitions are broken and all that, yeah, that's going to be a fun time. I mean, you can piece them back together, but especially if none of them are aliased, man, I'd clean that out. I would go in and try to clean out as much of it as possible. And again, like if you got VAVs or all common units, man, all you need is just one equipment definition. And, that makes your life much easier, especially when doing graphics. You have one equipment definition, you build one graphic, and if there is any kind of specialty stuff out there, like if you got something special on one device or another, you can go in for those specific devices and build an additional graphic based on the alias to add the whatever equipment specific stuff it is. But yeah, alias graphics are much easier to work with, because there again, man, build it once and you're done. It's nuts. 6-building hospital campus. That's decent sized. They fired their on-site controls guy, choosing not to rehire. I'm probably going to come in under the mechanical. Yeah. I get it. I don't know why places don't invest in their own techs, because it would be a money saver. I mean, you get a good controls tech working for an organization. That controls tech, if they're good, they will save a fortune over what they pay to hire somebody in to do controls work. That is the reality. Just like with, you figure like that one video, the last video that I did, replacing that NAE, that network engine. Imagine if you were Johnson coming in and replacing one. Same with a Tritium Jace. I've got another Jace that I'm going to be putting in. I may try to do a video on that one too at some point. But imagine how much it would cost to have a vendor come in compared to someone on site that has the tools and the ability to do that. And you do that a few times over, then you've paid, that person's salary is justified. Let's see here. Yeah, appreciate it, John. I'm glad you watch. I know we don't have a lot of people that watch this channel, but the few of you guys that do, I'm glad you all are here. A few review videos through Google Notebook to make some CCT videos for the new guys. Yes, I put out one here a while back, basically just to get started on the programming. I did one basically just how to write your first VAV program. And as far as CCT, I've got a playlist on it. I know that there's probably some updates that I can do just because of the version of CCTs that are out there, and it changes all the time, guys. So that's something that I can try to build off of. Is there certain aspects about CCT that you're having trouble with? I mean, is there anything specific? Because I know that there's a lot out there with CCT. It's a very powerful program, but CCT, just like anything else, the programming has got to be written properly. Reading logic. Yeah, that's one. That is a interesting thing. I'll see what I can do on something like that, because it takes a bit to get it to click. And once it clicks in your head, then it makes it much easier, especially if you're going to use state tables. And this is exactly why I was hoping to be able to pull the system up and do this actually live and have the system open where we could actually walk through some stuff. But I'm going to keep fighting on it to try to figure out how to do that. Your specific problem with CCT is customer sites not having the right versions installed to service their site. Yeah. Now, depending on which version that you are needing, I mean, from the license portal, depending on how far back you go, you should be able to run, if you're running the newer version of CCT, some of the equipment, you may be able to upgrade some of the older firmwares. I think you could I think with the newest version, which I know 18 has just dropped, Metasys 15 is just out, but you can upgrade some of those older devices to the newer versions. And now I know you can't do them to the latest version of CCT, but I think you can get a lot of them. I'm not going to say all, but I will say that a lot of them can be upgraded to 10.2 and give you a little bit more flexibility. I know that they can't be upgraded to 10.5, 10.6, and so on, especially those FECs, those older FECs. But you might be able to get some of them up to 10.2 fairly easy. Just depends on your system. Now, it will give you, in most cases, if you try to load a device that doesn't necessarily work, it will try to give you a warning. In many cases, it'll tell you, and it'll ask you, do you want to proceed anyway? Do not proceed. If you try to proceed after it tells you that warning, the only thing you're going to do is brick that controller, so do not proceed. But on some of the devices, depending on what they are, you may be able to upgrade those in the firmware to a newer version of CCT. Little caveat to that, especially if you are going to commission into them over the network. The version of the network engine that you are using will affect that. If you go some of the older versions of the network engine and you have a device that is at a newer firmware version, it will not let you commission into those devices. I don't remember exactly what version it is. I know that we had a network engine that was at 8.0, and then on that network engine, we had added some newer devices, some newer CVMs. And because of the version that those CVMs were, we could not commission directly into some of those newer devices. You could go into them, and I did. I could plug into them with a map gateway or whatever and do whatever I needed to do. Once I upgraded that engine and got that engine out of there, no problem whatsoever. But there are certain versions of CCT that, while it'll work on the engine and all that, you can't commission into it. Again, I cannot remember the specific versions that is. There may be some kind of a flash sheet or something out there on that. But just to be aware. But you may try upgrading one or two devices if you got a spare, or if you got some parts laying around that's at some of those older devices versions, then you might be able to just try them to see what they do. Site mostly at 10.0. I could upgrade them to 10.2, just not super thrilled to take the chance of bricking them if the network isn't great. At Metasys, yeah, that's a good question. I think that you would be okay, but I'm not going to swear to it. You know that, because I've seen it across the board. I mean, I've seen engines and devices, you would load them, no problem whatsoever, and then others you would brick. I've seen that too. CCT conversion, I can't talk this afternoon. Conversion to PCT, download to XF, yeah. Basically what you need for CCT to be able to do that, if you have, I think if I remember correctly, and there's a friend of mine that he actually used to work for Johnson, and he's doing something different now. He's actually done this. And basically what you've got to do, I think, is you got to change the extension on the file name, if I remember correctly, him telling me. And you need to have the software packages. And if you've got the software packages there, again, CCT for Facilities Explorer is CCT for Metasys. It's the exact same software. It is just a question of the device packages. I've got both on my laptop, and that's the only difference in there. But as far as changing one from the other, I think another way that you would be able to do it is if you have the software packages, is open the file. For example, if you're going like from a Metasys device to a Facilities Explorer device, or vice versa, if you have the software packages, basically open that software in CCT and obviously save a copy of it, and then go into the device selection. And once you get into the device selection, you should be able to select the other type of controller, whether it's going from Metasys branded to Facilities Explorer branded, or vice versa. I would think that would work as well. I'm not 100% certain about that. I know, there again, a friend of mine, that's kind of his specialty. Yes, I am N4 certified. I am Tridium N4 certified as well. I will admit I do not have as much experience with Tridium as I do with Metasys. There again, we do have some Tridium Jaces on our site. I've got them integrated in with our equipment. If you've seen some of my videos, yes. Tridium, there again, I mean, it's a powerful tool. There's a lot in there in Tridium. I like the fact that you can go in, like, for example, a lot of Tridium specific devices, you can actually go in and write the programming for those devices directly in Workbench, and you're done. You don't need like third-party software or anything like that. But again, yes, I am N4 certified, but I don't have as much experience in Tridium as I do in Metasys. Tridium is a great thing. I mean, I learned a lot when I went through the certification, when I went through the class, and then what time that I've worked with it. It really broadened. There again, I'd worked with Metasys for years prior. Didn't really understand a whole lot about Tridium, just kind of pecked at it a little bit. But after I went through that class, and then we started getting some Jaces in, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. 100 ways to do everything. Yes. Almit, thank you for joining, becoming a member. How are you doing? Yeah, the possibilities in Tridium are great. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff there. I mean, yes, 100 different ways of doing things, and there's a lot of shortcuts in there as well. Yep, the controller lineups, and I think that's one of the things that Johnson, I hope that they get where they will open it up a little bit more. I think that it would be a little beneficial to them. Do I think JCI will release the NAEs to other vendors? Yes. In fact, there are certain regions to where they've already done that. There are, and there again, basically, you have different vendors that actually do the installs. They subcontract everything out. I know that is something that they've been talking about doing in other regions as well. And there's a bit of a fight going between some of these vendors and the branches. I'm not going to say everything that I know about it, but I know that there's a bit of a fight going on with that kind of thing. Just because the branch, obviously, if other vendors had access to that, it's going to obviously hurt their business for people that want to run Medisys. But at the same time, there's an advantage from the customer side as well as, I think, corporate side, just to be honest with you. You don't want to open it up to everybody, to just anybody comes along and throws it in. You want to have some type of a standard, but I really think that it would benefit them corporate wide if they did to a certain aspect, to a certain percentage of it, because for one thing, it is going to get the software and some of the technology out there into more hands. And just kind of as a caveat, if you look at like your schools, particularly like your colleges and stuff like that, Microsoft has deals with those colleges to where all of the students, as well as faculty and staff, have access to literally the enterprise account of all of the Microsoft Office, Microsoft 365 and all that. Microsoft is being smart about that. And the reason that I say that is because what happens when those kids graduate from school and they get out making decisions for these companies years down the road, and they're going to want to work with what they are familiar with. So the more familiar you can get people with your software or whatever, the better off you're going to be. And I think that kind of the same thing with Johnson. It's just that they have not gotten there yet. And it's kind of a struggle. You've got a difference between the corporate world and the techs that are out there running the show. I mean, that's just all there is to it. Everybody at the corporate level of Johnson lives off of two people, and that is the salesman and the tech. And that's not just Johnson. That is Controls Company, regardless of what they're doing. Those are the two people that everybody else lives off of, the salesman and the controls tech. Okay. Almet, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. You're new to BAS and will be taking new training. Appreciate you watching the videos. Yes. You're going to feel overwhelmed. Don't let that bother you. You're going to feel overwhelmed, especially when you get started doing this. And I always tell guys when they get started into this, and the guys that I've worked with and stuff like that, we're going to take a whole lot of stuff, a big bucket of stuff. We're going to dump all of it on you all at once. It's not all going to stick. The next day, we're going to do the same thing. Maybe a little bit more of it will stick each time until you get it to that point to where you have, to where you have gotten it, gotten a better understanding. Sorry, phone was ringing. And, it just takes time to do that. It takes time to really learn it. So, just don't get frustrated. Don't give up and all that, but don't give up on it. And let me send a text real quick. And anyway, sorry about that, guys. I was getting a call. So I just sent a text out to get that taken care of. That's how it is. Let's see here. Subcontracting out of engineering to India. Yeah, we've had problems over there, especially with graphics, some of the stuff they've done. And again, they're probably putting guys in there that have don't really have experience with it, because you can get the same thing here as well. The ones that we got from there, oh my goodness! Like I say, they crashed their server once. Fortunately, I was able to recover it fairly easily, but it's a no-no. for us. I mean, it's just a flat out no. I think that that is one of the big things there. Yeah, you'll drink from the fire hose. That is exactly right, John. I mean, that is, that's obvious. We had some when the last time that they tried to put some on our server. I got into the equipment definitions, and basically what they did is they blasted our server with just a bunch of unbound references to the point that it literally crashed it. Because I pulled up the equipment definitions, and there was just so many blanks, so many things that were just clearly coming in as unreliable that it would not work. So I ended up literally just blowing it out. Let's see here. Worked for JCI branch. Anything from JCI wasn't a pro. Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, we've had stuff like that. One of the guys that works for JCI, he's a young engineer. I literally got T-shirts older than this guy. He's good. I mean, he's coming right along, and he's the one doing the programming. So that's a big thing for us, and that's something that we push for. Just because yes, we've had that same thing happen. You get some of that overseas stuff because there again, no matter what their skill knowledge is, whatever that basis is, the people that are there on the ground working on the equipment that is there in front of them are the ones that know what's going on. Someone that's literally on the other side of the planet, they don't know for sure exactly what it is. They're working off of a piece of paper, and it may or may not come out the way that they think. And that anytime you're doing this stuff, there's always tweaks and things that you have to do. Wow, guys, we're up to 7 folks in here. But yeah, again, Ahmed, just don't get discouraged. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have aggravating days. That's just part of it. The longer you're in it, the more you're going to learn. It's just a process. Get in with guys that have a background on it. Soak up everything that you can from them, and learn what you can from them. I mean, and they'll help you. And again, there's going to be times though that you're just going to have to sit around, that you're going to face those frustrations. I know I've had it happen, and that's just part of it. Yes, 100%. Yep, finding a mentor. Agreed. BAS can be hard. Again, if the longer you're in it, it really depends. Part of it is because there's so many things out there, so many different generations. And the goal basically is to try to make so many different generations of devices, so many different generation types of devices, all work together under one system. And that is where it does get hard, because there is just some things that just flat out will not work together. We had an older, it was a chiller, it was a Trane chiller, and just to throw it out there. And the controller that was in that chiller, according to Trane, it would communicate via BACnet, or they could make it communicate using BACnet. It was originally set up to do LAN. And there again, LAN bad. Sorry, that's just my view. LAN bad. Trane said that they should be able to convert to communicate via BACnet, because what was happening, the network engine that we were using to communicate to this machine, we had an issue, and we had the network engine fail. This is one of those older Johnson network engines that had a LAN specific trunk on it. And when it failed, we were down. I mean, there was just nothing that we could do. And it was either pull in people to do lawn works and all that. And I was able to get it up and running with a different one. We got one out of a repair center, and I was able to get the machine back up, get it online. But what we tried to do from that point was get that machine over to BACnet. And Trane come in and they thought that it'd be an easy switch, and it was not. Basically, before it was over with, we had a new controller in the chiller. With a newer device, a newer Trane device, communicate BACnet, no problem whatsoever. But that original one with the board and everything they put in, it would not do it. I mean, we had Trane guys out there. We had Johnson guys out there. It would not communicate via BACnet. I mean, literally, they could go through their settings, and you could see it right there on the screen that everything was supposedly perfect as far as the baud rate, as far as the device ID, everything, but it would not talk on a BACnet MSTP trunk. And to prove it, we literally took an expansion module, literally pulled the power wires off, went down past it, and tied it in. And just to show, look, we know that our cabling is good. It was new cabling, new wiring, and everything. And it worked. I mean, it worked fine. Yeah. Lawn bad. 15 years ago. Yeah, lawn is, no thank you. I think more people are moving away from lawn. I think about the only time you see it now. I know, like, you get into some lab areas, like if you work with Phoenix valves and stuff like that, a lot of the older ones of those are still using lawn, and they'll usually go to like a tritium front end. And I know that's what we've got. But even a lot of those, the new Phoenix valves, they are moving away from lawn, and they're actually moving to BACnet as well, just because BACnet is so much smoother. I mean, you know that. And literally, you try to add a point, just auto discover, and there it is. Yep, lawn is toast, and it can't be gone soon enough, in my opinion. I know there's stuff that's going to be out there for a long time. Yeah, Distech should get rid of all of them. Should get rid of lawn. I mean, I know that there's still just different ones out there, and a lot of them are happening. You know, a lot of them are doing that. Phoenix is still out there. You know, as far as that, I mean, we've still got a lot of Phoenix controls on our, just in lab areas. That's where we see all of our Phoenix stuff. And the newer ones, and like I say, the new stuff is BACnet, and you know, the ones that we have are still lawn, but you know, they're still there. You know, I wish that the ones that we had were not lawn, but they are. And you know, but I mean, it's still out there. I mean, it's literally they're tied to a Phoenix branded Jace. I think it's a Jace 8000 that's got a lawn card in it. And one thing that aggravates me about it too is they have got it locked up. I mean, I know there's ways of getting in there and doing things with it, but you know, I really hate that they have it locked in the way that they want. You know, instead of going to make your life easier, and you know, that's what we do, is basically is go right back with a newer Phoenix branded Jace. But you should be able to go in and put whatever you want. And I know you can, but just in simplicity, you know, we'll just put, you know, if we have a failure, which we have had a couple of failures, we would just go right back in with the Phoenix branded Jace. And there again, I mean, you know how it is. You got to get 1,000 things done at once. Anyways, John, yeah, thanks. Glad that you could be in here. I'm not sure how much longer we'll be able to go on this chat. There's still a few of us here. We've been going for 52 minutes, almost 53 minutes so far. Who else have we got out there? But yeah, thanks, John, for coming by. We'll see you next time. Who else? Anybody else want to chat? Yes. Now, here's the thing about that JCI lab controller. They do have a new lab controller themselves. However, it is not as much of a JCI specific lab controller as you may think. Basically, what they do and what they did on their older ones back years ago, the older Phoenix systems, I guess you could say, or the older way that they would set that up, they had it was labeled as a UNT, but it was basically it was labeled as a VAV, but it's basically a UNT, unitary controller. And the boards on the valve, the Phoenix valve board, it communicated similar to the way a smart thermostat would communicate to your HVAC unit. It would actually get its inputs from the Phoenix board, literally driving analog inputs, and then it would send analog and digital outputs to that Phoenix board to control either heating or cooling or whatever. The newer JCI lab control does basically the same thing as that one, as the old stuff. And like when we did our upgrade on one of our buildings, and we went back with the newer Phoenix controllers, because they're direct into them now. There again, you got the way that they would work, even though it's a lawn valve going to a Phoenix branded Jace. You can see a lot more. You can have a lot better range, because one of the things that happened with some of the equipment that we had, you guys know how like analog signals and stuff like that, when you're trying to measure CFM and all that, when you're translating that through an analog signal, volts, millivolts, milliamps, and all that kind of stuff, that stuff will drift over time, and you're not going to get as accurate a reading as you would literally digitally right out of those boards. So that was one of the reasons too why we went with the Phoenix stuff instead of those new JCI controllers. We looked at them. We had some meetings and things like that with them, but we decided to not go with those new JCI lab controllers. Yep, you do get lag. There is a lot of lag in those as well. But for us, just the fact that you're limited on what you could see, just because of how it had functioned in the previous version of it, we did not go back with it. We did go with just the Phoenix straight into our system. And there again, when I pull those in, and you've probably seen the videos on my channel, if those Jaces are set up right, I mean, you can discover those points. The only thing about it is everything comes in just a big blob. You got to go in and set up folders and then pull all the points for certain devices into certain folders and so on. But in my opinion, you still get a better system that way. It's a lot of work up front, but I think you get a better overall system, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. So, but yeah, you do get the lag too. Do a video on unlocking. Are you talking about unlocking of Phoenix? Yeah. I'll probably have to get a little more experience on that myself. I have done with the help of some Tritium pros. We have actually gone in and replaced one Jace with just, I think it was like a Vicon Jace. But man, I don't know how easily I'd be able to do that again, because there again, like I say, the guy that came in and helped us do that, he's actually a Tritium instructor, and he actually had some tools. And I think this is one of the big things about it too. He had some tools that were specifically for doing things like that. Now, whether or not he's supposed to have those tools, I don't know, but you know how things are when it comes to computers and the internet and all that. But he had a lot of specialty tools that I don't have. So he is able to do that kind of stuff. Me, that there again, like I say, I may be N4 certified, but as many of you guys out there know, there's a whole lot of stuff out there, and I'll admit there's a whole lot of stuff that I've not seen. So, that's part of it as well. But anyways, guys, I think that we are about an hour in. And I'm probably going to jump off. I got a few other things to do. And yes, I agreed 100%. I mean, there's just so much out there. The N4 class, I mean, it's a tough class. It's a challenging class, and it's a good class, and I would recommend anybody taking it. But you're only scratching the surface as far as what you can do. Yes, he had the cheat codes. He not only had the cheat codes, he had the cheat workstation, the cheat workbench, the cheat everything. There again, he's a Tritium instructor. So, I mean, he had multiple licenses for multiple different brands of stuff and everything. Obviously knows a lot about the stuff. But yeah, that N4 class is tremendous. It's a good class, but you're only scratching the surface as far as what you can do. I appreciate it. Sleeper Cell 13. That's an interesting name. I like that. Just passed your N4 certification. The course was really a lot of information. Yes, it is a lot of information. It is a ton of information, and you're going to learn more the more you're fooling with it. There again, you're only scratching the surface. There is a channel out there for Tritium stuff, and I'll just throw it out there to you. One Site Solutions, probably one of, then they've got some deep stuff. I mean, it's a real good site. That's one of the sites that, I've been on their page a lot. If there's something that I want to look up, I'll look on their site too. There's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of forums out there too. I know I've gotten some answers on some of the forums that, just questions that I've had to put out there for Tritium as well. Literally Tritium University, the help forum that's there. And, you should be able to do that too if you've got, your N4 certification and all that. KC, not a problem. I'm going to keep trying to crank videos out here. I don't get a lot of views on this channel, but I know that it's folks out there. I really don't think that there's enough vocational and educational support for this kind of thing. Outside of the manufacturers, man, I mean, there's not hardly any schools that teach this stuff, or I don't know of any. The only ones that I know of are always tied to one of the manufacturers, whether it's Honeywell or whether it's Johnson Controls or, one of the manufacturers. So, but anyways, guys, we are just over an hour. I appreciate y'all being here. But I think I'm going to jump off now, and I've got a few other things that I'm going to do before the night ends. I've got some stuff to do tomorrow. Of course, it's a Monday morning, and you all know how that goes, which I've got some other things. I'm playing hooky tomorrow, but I got some other things I got to do. But guys, I'm going to call that a day. Hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I'm sure we'll be doing this again sometime. Guys, thanks for watching. Check out the rest of the videos on my channel. Check out the affiliate links down below. I'm getting a phone call, and guys, we'll see you next time.
Jason, I think your mom's got company.